It's good to be back, actually. I was here last year talking about BlaBlaCar and talking about how we scale BlaBlaCar. And actually, what I wanted to talk about this time is not so much BlaBlaCar, and actually not so much France, where the company is from, but Europe. And I wanted to talk about the fact that I think we all know that we're not that good still at doing like global companies from Europe. We don't have the Amazon of Europe, we don't have the Google of Europe, we don't have the Facebook of Europe. So I guess one of the key questions, so I wanted to explore that with you and share some thoughts and share some learnings actually building BlaBlaCar as a global company. So as a starting point, I guess one of the questions we should ask ourselves as European companies is Europe big enough? Is the ocean big enough in Europe to expand these companies, to grow these multinational companies? And if you think of it, and if you think of Europe as a single market, as opposed to a collection of small markets, actually it is a big market, right? Today, if you think of Europe, it's about 500 million people. And not just 500 million people, it's 500 million people with very high smartphone penetration, lots of cars, people travel a lot, we buy as much clothing, as much food, as much anything as in the US. So clearly, Europe as a single market is not the problem here. The problem is how do we address Europe as a single market? And again, another way to see that is if you look at GDP of the US versus Europe versus the rest of the world, Europe is still one of the biggest markets out there for consumer. Right? So if you think of consumer internet companies, if you really focus and nail Europe, you actually have like a massive ocean in which you can build your company. And that's kind of the genesis of BlaBlaCar and how we've decided to build the company. So then we might wonder, maybe part of the issue is we're just not good at building companies. And if you look historically, so we looked at like the top 100 companies in the world, the biggest 100 companies out there in terms of market capitalization. And Europe is pretty big. I mean, today, 30 of the biggest companies of the top 100 companies in the world are actually European. So historically, over the last 100 years, we haven't been so bad at building big companies. Yet, when we think of technology, when we think of internet and consumer internet especially, we have a big ocean, Europe is a big ocean, but we're building these pretty small companies. And here is the staggering number, right? So if you look at market capitalization in technology, even though we have a bigger consumer market, we have more cars, we have pretty much more cell phone, more everything in Europe, 79%, so I'll just unfold this thing, 79% of technology value is actually driven by the US. And only 4% is actually coming from Europe. So right now, we weight 4% of the future of the industry, 4% of technology. So if you think of it, if you think of like, of the future, that's pretty worrying that all the value, even though we have a huge market in front of us, we have a huge ocean in front of us, we're only capturing 4% of that value today. The US is capturing 79%. And by the way, if you look at that not just for 100 companies, but if you look at that for thousands of companies, it doesn't change the numbers, right? So it's the same reality. So the main problem, and I often use this case study, but there are plenty like that. The main problem is we're not building European companies. We're building French companies. We're building Finnish companies in a sense of we're building companies that only target those markets. So we've been pretty good at building like a good e-commerce German company targeting the German market, a French marketplace targeting the French market. And the example of these companies actually, which are all very successful companies, is on the online real estate market. So it's like places you would go to actually buy or sell or rent actually an apartment or a house. So everyone in the UK, I don't know if there are people in the UK here, we know rightmove.co.uk. So that's the place you go to if you want to buy a house or sell a house. No one in Germany, no one in France, no one in the Nordics, no one in Spain, no one in Italy has ever heard of this company. Yet it's a multi-billion-dollar company. Sologer is the same company in France, Immobilien is the same company in Germany. So if you think that, back in the days, actually, some of these companies that targeted Europe as a market, we would have built like a tens of billions of dollar company, and we would have built like one of these gorillas that end up like, feeding the ecosystem. So obviously the issue is, if we keep building like small fish in every market, we never build these giants that actually survive, like the Amazon, the Google, the Facebook, the eBay, the Priceline, the Expedia of this world. So I just wanted to tell you a bit about BlaBlaCar and what we're trying to do actually to build a European company and really to target Europe as a single market. So very quickly, what we do, since we're not in the Nordics, I think it's good to step back and describe a bit the activity. BlaBlaCar is a city-to-city ride-sharing service. So essentially, it's a marketplace between drivers and passengers, where drivers, let's say driving from Munich to Berlin, would go on the website, and they would offer the empty seats to passengers going the same way. And then passengers book those empty seats and end up traveling together. So what we end up doing actually at a European and now global scale is we're actually building what could become one of the biggest terrestrial transport company in the world, actually. Because we're making use of all the empty seats in cars, and we're filling up those cars with passengers wanting to travel. So today, to give you a sense of scale, I mean, the company is about 200 people. It's about 10 million members sharing rides in Europe, and it's over 2 million people using the service every month. The company has grown pretty rapidly, actually, in the last couple of years. So it really started to explode as a European phenomenon in 2011, 2012. At that time, we raised $10 million from Accel Partners. And more recently, in 2014, we raised $100 million, which was the biggest round of venture capital in France and one of the biggest in Europe, to really scale the company massively outside of Europe, Russia, Turkey, and the rest of the world. So what I wanted to share very quickly is how we've built a European company. Because today, if you look at all these markets where we operate, whether it's France, Spain, UK, Germany, Poland, Italy, Russia, Turkey, and several more, we're actually number one in all these markets. Right? So we managed to launch early enough, or to acquire early enough, to actually claim leadership in all these markets. And so we've done several things. We've done local teams. We unified the brand. But one thing I wanted to talk about is acqui-hiring. So we had like a strategy very early on, actually, in the life of BlaBlaCar, of going and acquiring companies in different countries to consolidate BlaBlaCar into a European company. So I want to tell you 3 quick stories, actually, of 3 acquisitions that have been like defining for us in the growth of BlaBlaCar. The first one was when I met this guy, Olivier Bremer, actually, who was running like a similar company in Italy back in 2011. And I went to Olivier and I said, well, look, we're building this thing in France, you're building this thing in Italy. It doesn't really make sense. We should build it together. Why don't we join forces? And of course, he told me, like, why would I do that? Yeah, I'm building this company in Italy. I'm German. I could do it in Germany too. Why would I bother joining a French guy? And true. So I said, OK, well, we could build that together, and I'm going to go raise $10 million, and then we're going to expand all over Europe. So we talked and talked and talked, and after about 9 months of negotiation with a German and an Italian, which is pretty tough, we managed to join forces, and we launched Italy. And then quickly after that, we launched Germany. So suddenly, that completely changed the paradigm of BlaBlaCar, because we were this company in France, in Italy, in Germany, and we were also in Spain and the UK back then. And then I kept on going, and I met this guy, actually, in Poland. And back then, I was interested in Poland because it was one of the big countries we were not into in Europe. So it was really based on Wikipedia information, like number of people in the country and so on. And I was looking for a BlaBlaCar type company in Poland, but could not find anything, except this guy was starting like an interesting sort of mid-range ride-sharing company. And he had received actually a grant from the EU and was telling me, like, OK, I'm not going to stop. I just received some money to build this thing. So why would I join BlaBlaCar? And same thing, we had this long discussion about how we already in Italy, how we already in Germany, how we already in France and Spain. And after a few meetings and a few trips there, actually, we ended up doing something together, and we ended up joining forces. And today, Piotr is not just managing Poland, actually, he's managing the entire expansion of BlaBlaCar in Eastern Europe and Russia. And last but not least, actually, earlier this year, I found this guy, Alexei, and it's a very interesting story because he started a company in Ukraine, of all places. And we ended up talking last year, actually, about like joining forces to launch Russia, which was like a big challenge for us, like a massive expansion outside of Europe. And after lots of talks, he had already raised money. Initially, didn't want to join us. And then after some discussions and some convincing, we decided to join forces. And we ended up launching, actually, and it was funny or not funny, we ended up launching in March 2014 when Putin was actually pretty much invading Ukraine. So it was a pretty interesting time for to discuss that at the board and with investors, that we were just launching Russia from Ukraine when Russia was actually invading Ukraine. But today, Russia is like the fastest growing country for BlaBlaCar. So it's like the biggest activity we've ever seen, and it's a massive win for us. So in all of these cases, every time it was a stretch, it was a cultural stretch, it was a stretch for the company, it was a big risk for these guys, a big risk for us. But at the end of the day, it really paid off, and we went from being like a French company targeting 60 million French people to today targeting 700 million people across Europe and Russia and Turkey, which we launched recently. So that's how we expanded our footprint. And the reason it matters actually to create this massive footprint is today, if we look at how we're growing against companies like Airbnb in terms of brand awareness, our ocean is big, right? So today we expand into all European countries, all major European countries. We expand into Turkey, we expand into Russia. And you can see that we have the same growth curve as a service like Airbnb, which is now global, just with a 2-year delay, essentially, because we started a bit later. Right? So you cannot do that. It's impossible to do that if you just end up being a German company or a French company or an Italian company targeting a tiny market. So we had to expand the footprint to get this massive growth. And today what it means, I mean, you can see the curve of like people joining the service. So it has exploded essentially in the last couple of years. We have over 10 million people growing extremely fast in terms of people joining the community. And what's key and what we managed to do within 2 years is to go, so what I'm showing here is actually the number of people joining the community every quarter. So it's not the community itself, it's the people actually joining for the first time BlaBlaCar. And we went in 2012 from being like 100% French to essentially being like 2/3 international, 1/3 France. And if I come back in 1 year, I'll probably be saying like 90% of the growth of the community is coming from different countries. And going back to acquisitions, which is something like startups don't tend to do until they get really big, actually, for us it paid off big time. Because today, 50% of the growth of BlaBlaCar comes from 3 acquisitions we made, from 3 acqui-hires that today drive Italy, Germany, Poland, Eastern Europe, Russia, Ukraine. So that's how we've done it. And the key conclusion for me was, yes, Europe is lots of small fish companies, but if we join up, actually, if we think of Europe as being our market, we can actually win. Thank you.